Yeah, we can see it in, in config maps, in cron jobs, in daemon sets, in deploy, like all around. Okay, it's not just specifically on one specific YAML file. So I can say, hi, okay, be aware of this specific file, configuration file that I don't know on the cron job, but it's across. So again, be aware. It's something that we're saying all the time, but not always we're implementing what we're saying, right? So we should.
Welcome to the DevSec for Scale podcast, the show that makes security a first-class citizen for growing companies. Welcome back, everyone, to the DevSec for Scale podcast. I'm Jeremy Hess, Head of Developer Relations at Achilles. Today with me is a really great guest, Rotem Refael. She is Director of Engineering at ARMO. ARMO is a really cool Kubernetes security company here in Tel Aviv. And Rotem, it's really great to have you on the show. Before we get started with you and a little bit more about the work that you're doing today, let's get straight into some of the research. So I know that ARMO did some cool research into scanning public repos, and they found a lot, and we're talking today about misconfigurations in clusters. So let's talk a little bit about the research. Can you give us some numbers and some information about how that research was done and what you came up with?
Sure, Jeremy, it's great to be here. Well, we gather like the R&D, few team members from the R&D, and we kind of set on our data. We scan, I think, tens of thousands of clusters, and we took kind of 10,000 clusters, and we just made some models on that in order to get a real result for what which misconfiguration we have in those clusters. The main thing, okay? So we came out with 100% of the clusters have misconfigurations, okay? So I'm not sure that's shocking everyone here, but it's a thing, okay? It's a thing. And if we're getting like deep dive, we can see that 65% of the clusters missing resource policy. They have immutable container file system, like around 70% of the ingress and egress are not blocked. Okay, there is direct route. So there are some main impact about the cluster when you're having those misconfigurations, and we did it just for 10,000 clusters. Okay, those are big numbers that we're talking about.
Absolutely. So yeah, so we're going to get into a little bit more of the types of misconfigurations that you're dealing with on a regular basis. We know that there are tens, if not hundreds potentially, of possible misconfigurations, but we're going to get into just a few because we have a limited amount of time. And so before we get a little bit more into those misconfigurations, let's talk a little bit about you. Rotem, can you give us some background on yourself and a little bit about what you're doing today?
Of course. I have around 12, 13 years of experience in development. I came from Java development, and in the past 5 years, I got into DevOps and infrastructure, the ecosystem that we're in now. And I'm a mother. I have 2 kids. Today, I'm Director of Engineering ARMO. ARMO is a company that was founded in 2019, and we're now building an open source named Kubescape open source security tools. It's made for developers, for DevOps. Okay, we know what DevOps and developers need regarding the security aspect, and that's what we're doing today. We'll welcome everyone to get into and contribute. Okay, it's an open source, and we're into it so hard. Yeah, that's basically all. That's me.
Great. GitHub.com/probably Kubescape. But what we're going to do is we'll link to the research that was done, and we'll also link to the repo for Kubescape so that any developers that aren't yet familiar with it can have a look at it and can also contribute. So that's always great to have open source. We're big proponents, big fans. So getting into some of the meat of the podcast, you mentioned that one of the things in the research that was done found that quite a lot of issues are happening on the networking side, especially in terms of exposing workloads. So can you explain a little more in detail about what that looks like and how that happens?
Basically, we have the network policy control that makes the connection between the pod and the namespace and external IP. And like by default, there isn't one, okay? And when network policies don't have their ingress or egress definition, then we're exposed. Okay, we're exposed to the outer world, and that's one of, it's a basic thing, but again, it's one of the major misconfigurations that we're having, and we saw in what I've mentioned previously. Again, it's a small section in the network policy YAML file that we're looking for, and we understand that it's not there. Again, the only remediation is to add that to the YAML file. So yeah, basically that's an enormous one, but it's very simple to add it.
It's interesting. It seems like there should probably be some sort of method that we could use to basically memorize or have it written down in front of us, at least, sort of a list that just says, here are the different types of issues with networking. Here are the different issues that come with, application, when you're pushing something to production, things like that. And this seems like one of those that could probably be pretty easily fixed if you just had a really good method for doing that. Is that something that you do yourself?
We are splitting currently our product to frameworks because all of us wants to be compliant to someone, okay, to the NSA, to the MITRE, but we also have our own platform that what we think is the most important keys, and we're calling it controls or tests that we should operate. So ARMO, we are calling it ARMO best framework, okay? So there we're putting, the most really important thing that we understand that user just misses, okay? They're just missing. It's not something, it's not harmless, but they're missing it. So we've put all the controls there. And when you're scanning this specific framework, you can just get a list of exactly where it stands and what relates to, okay? And also, okay, another nice feature that we're adding is you can custom your framework. You can call, let's say, network framework, development framework, application framework, okay? And then, each stakeholder can run that and get his results and don't mess, with other things that I couldn't care less or know nothing about. So this one is a great solution, okay, for that kind of problem you raised.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I accidentally got into somewhat of a sales pitch, and I didn't even realize I was doing that. So
I'm sorry.
No, it's great. There's nothing to be sorry about. It's great. It's great that there is such a thing, because actually, when I thought about it, I didn't have anything in mind that there was necessarily such a thing to begin with. But obviously, if you run something like what ARMO offers, then you are going to get a list back. And obviously, you want to run it in development. You don't want to run it in production. You probably want to run it in production
Exactly.
too, just in case. But definitely.
No, but there is even more than that. Okay, you're creating different environments, right? Where developers are testing things. Okay, so I don't want to to block them in their development environment. I do want to block that in the production environment. So you can create some kind of the dev framework and production framework, okay, and run different controls here and there. again, okay, we're giving all those controls to run in production. We do think it's very, very important to run, but you have the severities, okay? So you can manage and see what's most important, and if you want to play, let's say again, limits, okay? You want to play the limits in the development. You want it to be 500 giga, and in production you want it to be 1 tera. Okay, so it stands there.
Yeah, really cool. Okay, yeah. So let's continue on to some more issues that we find. And obviously, one of the big ones, which I when I speak to guests of the show off camera or off mic, we talk sometimes about how security and credentials specifically is one of those things that's talked about. It seems like a lot, but it also isn't always kept under control. It's kind of almost a second thought. So what are some of the application credential issues that you're seeing on a regular basis, and what are the remediations for that?
Well, we do see in several YAML files, okay, that developers are inserting the secrets specifically in the YAMLs, and in some cases it's okay, but in production it's not. Then we're looking for sensitive values, for specific keywords, for naming, for sensitive keys that are allowed, okay? Because there are some keys that we might see a key name, okay, but it says that one is okay, leave it there. So we have the one that you want to remove, and we have the one that you want to left. So that's basically it. We do see, okay, secrets in the YAML files. It's not something that is abandoned or people, knows about. Okay, this is very familiar, across the industry, right? Don't put your sensitive information, ta 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 ta. But yeah, still is okay. And we want to avoid that. Of course, if someone access to one of those configurations file, okay, with a secret key, with the hard-coded secret, then he can get inside our cluster and do meaningful things there. So yeah.
So beware, and definitely try to use
environment
variables at a minimum.
Yeah, we can see it in in config maps, in cron jobs, in daemon sets, in deploy, like all around. Okay, it's not just specifically on one specific YAML file. So I can say, hi, okay, be aware of this specific file, configuration file that I don't know on the cron job, but it's across. So again, be aware. It's something that we're saying all the time, but not always we're implementing what we're saying, right? So we should.
Absolutely. So the next misconfiguration type of issue with Kubernetes clusters, and I guess clusters of any type of containers, really, is an issue with the versioning of the operating system they're using. And obviously, most of us are using Linux. So what are you seeing many users do in terms of just the operating system that they're using on their clusters?
Well, we see it in many deployments, but the SE Linux is not enabled. Okay, it's again, we're talking here about simple misconfigurations. Okay, it seems simple, just to enable SE Linux dot enable. That's it. But again, I know it can it can reflect on other things. Okay, it's not as easy as it sounds. I know, when you're enabling that, you can be blocked in various of other things and other deployments, etc. But again, that one is really important. Okay, you're getting all the updates. You're getting the hardening as Linux wants, and when you are running the containers, then of course we know that the operating system is inside. So again, it's very hard to keep that in mind, although maybe it's not coming built in the deployments that we're getting from all around. Okay, it's not part of the Helm chart that that you're spreading and get the deployments, and I'm getting the Helm chart, all good. Okay, that's their blame to do. No, okay, well, this blame is way in some cases, and if we have a solution, why not use that, right? So
Absolutely. Is there a way that, I guess this is a question for ARMO in terms of a product, is this a way that when the information is, or when, let's say, infrastructure is being built, when application is being created and pushed into dev and things like that, is this ARMO already there scanning everything before it's even deployed, let's say, into dev?
Yeah, in several ways. Okay, it's coming first from the code. Okay, we have we have a plugin. Okay, just I'm talking Kubescape, but there are much in the industry. There is a plugin for Visual Studio Code. Okay, that says, okay, you're missing that and that and that when you're compiling the code. Okay, and like the next one is you can also scan your repository. Okay, not going on to the cluster in production in runtime and then check it. You can check it one step before, shifting left. We're talking about shifting left all the time. Then you can shift left and check that in the repo, okay, in the Git repo that you're scanning, and see, oh, okay, here I'm scanning my Helm repo. Okay, let's say that I'm scanning my YAML files repo or deployment repo, or however people are storing their YAML files. You can just scan that and understand what are you missing, okay, which misconfigurations are there, very simply. And also you can, again, if you're moving a step ahead, going to the pipeline, okay, you can also define a threshold, okay, saying, okay, that one, if you're passing, let's say, rescore of I don't know, 20, okay, stop the pipe, okay, don't move on. So those three are kind of complete themselves, and completing the whole solution when the end is the production and dev environment with runtime. So yeah.
Right. All right, awesome. And so one of the, let's say, the last misconfiguration I think we'll talk about today for this podcast, at least this episode, is the cluster admin binding issues. What are some of those issues with access that you're coming across and seeing that are make things vulnerable within Kubernetes clusters, and how to remediate that?
Well, I think most of us know that role-based access control, the RBAC, okay, that we all know in that word, is mandatory, okay, when coming to Kubernetes. Not all, not everyone is operating it, but again, this one is mandatory. But let's say that, okay, we have the RBAC, but okay, we're having the cluster admin role, okay, and gives this role to, binds that to a lot of users, okay, then, okay, what we've done, it's like, permission mechanism, kinda. So we can see, okay, with this test, who has this role, who has this admin role in our cluster. Okay, let's say I have that. Why is that? Let's say I just install Prometheus, okay, for example. Prometheus it has to have this role. So I know, but I'm familiar with that, okay? So I can exclude that task from my scan and continue as usual. But we need to be aware who has that role inside the cluster. So again, RBAC is very, very important, okay? And we need to go and see the role and role binding, okay? What's connected to what? Of course, when it comes to the admin privilege.
And then what about when it comes to the applications itself, right? I mean, because you have the RBAC on the Kubernetes level, but then you also have it within the pod, within the applications that are being used. Is there anything there that that could be, used against a company in terms of, an attacker or hack, something like that?
Well, again, it's a role. It's a Kubernetes role. You don't. Again, it depends on the application. Okay, but my recommendation is if you don't must, the cluster admin role is very powerful one. So I don't want to give it to anyone. Okay, I want to cherry pick. I want to cherry pick my my roles in the cluster and create new ones if I need to. Okay, create new role bindings, and give them the permissions. Okay, and then I can track what's there. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So the last question, the question I like to ask all of my guests, as people who have been listening to the show know, is a question about how we can help developers in terms of security. So what are some of the, let's say, one or two simple practices that developers could use today to be more secure and keep more security best practices, but also not add too much extra work to their daily life cycles?
Well, I pretty much said it before, but I think it's worth mentioning it again. There are many plugins in Visual Studio Code. Again, depends on your ID, but I'm with that. I'm Visual Studio Code, and it's great. But there are a lot of plugins. Okay, also ours, but we won't talk about it. That checks your status. Okay, when you're compiling, you don't need you're compiling anyway. Okay, so you have the syntax error. Now you'll have just the security issues also with those errors. So I think it's timeless regarding the developer, and that's one thing. Like the other one is gators in the pipeline. Okay, I think the every developer, DevOps, okay, it depends on your role, should know the pipeline that's going into development, even not production. Okay, we're going on CI/CD, right? But you need to know the exact pipeline and to know where to enter the specific gates. Okay, before I'm creating the image, okay, I need to check if I'm security okay. Let's say that. If not, fail the pipeline. Then it's you're getting an alert in Slack, and no one will ditch that. Okay, so I think those two are time less consumers, okay, than all other things. I think it's very meaningful. You don't need to go on and enter things you don't want. Those two can simplify developers' work and be more secure.
So add plugins and have manual checks as well in your pipeline.
Yeah, even not manual, it's just a gator, automatic gator, okay, that says, okay, if you're above that, fail the pipeline, and then it automatically gives you a Slack notification or something, whatever you're using, and that's it. Okay, so I have a security problem in my pipeline. I have to go back to the code and see where the problem is. Okay, it says to me where the problem is. Okay, it's not just on the app. So yeah, those two are, again, I think it's meaningful and it's very easy to implement. Okay, you're compiling no matter what. Okay, you're building the pipe no matter what. It will fail or it will pass no matter what. So another step, it's crucial for this process.
Absolutely. Rotem, thank you so much for your time. This was a great episode. I think that anyone listening can learn a lot about just basic practices they can put in place to ensure their Kubernetes configurations are done as securely as possible. So thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.